So then you don't,
Interesting. Hi, everybody. I'm Skip Alzheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime streaming show where we watch old 16mm films. And that was from a fellow collector, filmmaker, Craig Baldwin, who's based in San Francisco. He just sent me a giant box of some things to scan. And I was like, well, if I'm going to scan them, why don't I show them to you guys? So that was one of my favorite genres of home movies, which is what I call the Kodachrome Halloween Parade. That was a thing. Is everybody is dancing and having a good time. Then there's this parade multiple times past someone with a camera. This happens a lot in school, at elementary schools, but it's glorious. And given the caliber of the costumes, I think all of those were homemade. And I think that these were maybe art students, definitely in college. They definitely seemed to have a maturity to them. And there wasn't, I think the person with the straw hat was the one that was kind of, seemed like they phoned it in. But, as always with many early Halloween parades, there's some cultural appropriation. Some people in what we call yellowface, maybe a person in blackface. I don't know. But anyways, unfortunately that's part of the trying to grasp other cultures and not really understanding them. But I still love it. Still love it. Anyways, so we watch, like I said, old 16mm films, and so let's go ahead and watch. Let me see, 1, 2, 3. About our friend water.
As people and animals, we climbed them when we were young. We walk among them now,
Painting trees.
and when our end comes, we may have our final rest under them. We may even share their beauty by becoming one with them. Good evening. I am Elliot, starting on a countrywide sketching trip and inviting you who share my love for trees to join me. We'll find the Kamani tree and the royal palm in Hawaii, the ceiba, or silk cotton, in Florida, Spanish moss in Georgia, or an old cottonwood in Tucson. We'll visit Key West for coconut trees, and the state of Maine for this wild cherry. Pictures can be realistic or abstract, but before dealing with plains like this, or rhythm, or selective color, we should go back to 3 fundamentals: a possible symbol for the tree, the structure of trunk and branches, and the character of the foliage. We'll start with this old elm in Chagrin Falls, Ohio. The elm has a definite structure, and the artist, ever on the watch for symbols, can easily notice that all of the limbs branch out to make the letter Y. This is more apparent in the winter, when we can see that the smaller branches repeat the same motif. Let us use this symbol, then, in painting the elm. If new, smaller Ys are added on top of each larger one, the result will have to be an elm tree. Finding a symbol for it is the first step towards capturing the personality of any tree. In the winter, when branches are bare, the sides of the Y are steep, but add several tons of leaves and the Y widens, causing the tree to mushroom out and to have a greater spread. Trees are not flat like printed Ys, but have branches that reach towards us and away, like these hands. Since light outdoors falls from above, we see the dark underside of the branches that incline towards us, but those on the far side show their light top sides. We'll make this one come towards us, also that one. The others, by contrast, will naturally seem to recede. In the bright sunlight of summer, the trunk will have a light and a dark side. I'm double loading the brush, putting the light color for the sunlit part on one side and the dark shadow color on the other. The simpler the description, the better. It is with this kind of stroke that I propose to paint the Y symbols. I'll do them as actual tree trunks and branches. The brush held diagonally makes the smaller branches. A shadow of a branch on the trunk. When there are leaves, they make a screen against the sky. We can achieve this effect by smearing with the flat of the brush, rather than by stroking. The paint remains only on the highest part of the paper's granular surface. The shadow side will be darker, as well as the underparts of the leaf masses, but should look warmer than this paint did on the palette. Two brushes on the same handle save time. They don't come that way, but it's easy to pull out the stick and combine them. They also take less space in the box. Twigs and small branches should go in while the foliage is still wet. They should, moreover, be seen in the breaks of sky. Those which occur under the umbrella of leaves will naturally be dark. Darker here, and very dark underneath. Now let us explore further the symbols for various trees. The maple, like the elm, has a symbol, the letter U. Steeper at the top, but wider below, so that the branch tips can stretch out to the vital sunlight. These trees were found in North Conway, New Hampshire, the Lombardy poplar. It reaches for the sky, and the artist's hand should feel the upwardness of the strokes, as if drawing long-stemmed L's. The branches of the weeping willow start in the same way, but as the brush moves up, it tires, and like a rocket, trails and swings listlessly. The Japanese have an amusing symbol for the pine branch. It is a duck's leg. Let that be the duck, and this the leg with its webbed feet. The pine trunk now replaces the duck, and we have only to add needles at the tip. Like analogies in writing, symbols in painting serve to heighten a quality. The sycamore should be characterized by a sickle. The same straight line with a curve on the end could serve as well for the apple or even the oak. The oak is strong. The hand that was listless when painting the willow must now hold the brush tightly and move with vigor. There's an unexpected quality in oak twigs and branches. They go their own way. The cedar, eucalyptus, and Monterey cypress have spiral markings in their bark, like strands of a frayed rope. This effect may be achieved in watercolor by long, sweeping strokes of a brush, which has so little paint that the hairs separate and act like a lot of small brushes. This cypress is in La Jolla, California. A four-tined pitchfork is shown because its structure resembles that of the mangrove. This tree, as you can imagine, is well anchored against the thrust of wind and tide. Turning from symbols to foliage, we find that a rough-brushed area as a basis may be treated to represent foliage of various trees. Tag it with a few large spots and you have a catalpa. The same treatment could serve for a magnolia or a banyan. A horse chestnut would have the spots in groups. The maple also has large leaves, and in autumn they are brighter in color than those of almost any other tree. A few brush marks label the character of the leaves. It's great fun, this putting in of dots, and when a thing is fun, we are likely to do too much of it. So whether it is a red tree or a yellow one, I advise that you use restraint. While the poplar foliage is finer, the same kind of rough brushing can describe it. But they're being labeled with small round dots at the tips of the upswept branches. This way. For pine needles, it is sufficient merely to flick the brush out from the edges of the painted area. An equally good method for Spanish moss. But here we flick downward. If it is a eucalyptus tree, then we may tag the clusters by narrow brush marks. Blossoms, as well as some kinds of foliage, are handled in quite a different manner. The background has been painted, and before it is dry, I drop clear water into it. These strokes I have nicknamed oozles. The process blurs one clump of foliage into another, just as whole trees may dissolve in the distance. Trees, like people, are gregarious. As in crowds, a few individuals may dominate a scene, while vast numbers are blurred and lost. This is the background going in now. When the blossoms are dry, the dark branches can be added, crisply, to contrast with the wet blended oozles and the distance. For these canoe birches in New Hampshire, the background is wet blended to throw it out of focus, and the trunks are taken out while the paint is still wet. The knife held flatly makes a broad mark, but for the finer branches, its tip is used. Do not hold the knife as if shaving, but as if spreading butter. That way. The excess paint forms the triangular marks that usually occur under each branch intersection. Aspens in Colorado or melaleucas in the south can be treated in this same way. The sycamore trunks turn and twist like serpents, and it is characteristic of them that the bark peels off, leaving leopard spots of tan or gray. Most pine trunks have rough bark, like this one at Lake Tahoe. This old beech shows scar tissue and stumps from lost branches. In painting these redwoods, I used wide knife scratches to portray the vertical slabs of bark, Going now to the south, we find entirely different sorts of trees. Their leaves or fronds are waxed and glossy to prevent the sap from evaporating in the tropical heat. The banana is a very good example of this. The trunk of the royal palm looks like cement, but has annular creases. These vary in thickness according to wet or dry years. Again, the double-loaded brush is used, but it continually starts and stops to show these creases. In the coconut bowl, there are circular grooves too, but they are like threads on a screw. We paint them by putting on first a band of color and then a zigzag line with a small brush. With certain palmettos, the fronds do not drop off but are cut, leaving spikes sticking out in spiral rows. A possible way of painting them is with rectangular dabs and knifing, but there may be better ways of portraying them.
Wow, I don't know what's going on there.
Petticoat variety
Hold on.
has to be painted with long, whisked-on strokes.
That was really weird.
There will be the dark cracks. A very fine nesting place for rats, I'm told. This is the underside, and these the dark cracks. The royal palm does not sweep or fan outward, but from the green sheath above the trunk unfurls a proud plume. I think it's my favorite of all the palms. In the palmetto, we find a thin stalk with a fan. This one is in California. It may be interpreted with a double motion, sidewise and outward. In the actual painting of the tree, it comes out in this manner. Coconut fronds are flexible and frequently occur on one side, being more affected by the wind than those of the royal palm. The top of the Washingtonian palm radiates like spokes of a wheel from a center and has a circle of fans at the ends. Trees are of various races, and they have their own personalities. I've tried to help you see their qualities, and I hope added to your enjoyment of them. We won't say goodbye to trees. They will always be here, unless we destroy them. They are the other half of the living world, and have almost as much capacity for being loved as people and animals. We climbed them when we were young. We walk among them now, and when our end comes, we may have our final rest under them. We may even share their beauty by becoming one with them.
So, sorry for interrupting that. Well, one, I hit the wrong button and brought up the wrong film. I was supposed to bring up your friend, The Water, Clean or Dirty, but it brought up Painting Trees by Elliot O'Hara, which is fine. It's a very tranquil thing. But towards the end of it, there was this loud music that I heard on my end. This loud, dramatic music. And I was like, I was scrambling to figure out where it was and like if you could hear it, and which is why I then went in and apologized, because I didn't know where it was coming from and why I could hear it, but nobody else could. That was really that went through me for a loop. I guess the more stuff I pile onto this streaming show, the more likely something weird like that's going to happen. So, there you go. Oh, no, that couldn't happen. All right. I have no idea. Anyways, This time, we're going to watch Your Friend the Water, Clean or Dirty. Enjoy.
Hello. Want to see where I came from? Hold your breath. First stop's the reservoir. Hold your breath again. It'll only take a minute. Here we are. Mountains, snow, forest. Wouldn't you like to live up here? Nice, clean water. Lots of it. See that beaver? See that moose? They like clean water. Getting downstream now. See those ducks? Those fish like clean water too. Let's us go fishing. Clean water is good for everybody. That's the only kind of fish you get in this dirty water. Let's get away from here and see what's wrong. Look at that. swim here. Can't even take a drink. What's going to happen to those poor fish? Poor fish.
So there's others in this series. I think there's Your Friend the Soil, and maybe Your Friend the Air. And they all are very early films that try to talk about pollution and the environment. Something that we certainly are talking about nowadays, but somebody recognized it back then. And I liked the fact the kid got shrunk down. I like when when a film was animated, two, when they start using supernatural aspects. All right, let's look out into space. Some of you might have noticed I've been showing a lot of Encyclopedia Britannica films, and that is because we've been doing a big Encyclopedia Britannica scanning project where we've been going through our films, going to tiny dark corners in our archive and pulling films, and so we've been digitizing a bunch of stuff that we haven't seen, and so I'm happy to share them with you, these freshly scanned films. So here's Space Probes exploring our solar system. Enjoy.
A space probe, unlike an ordinary Earth satellite, seeks out knowledge in regions far away from the Earth. As shown here in this historic film of the first probe, American Pioneer 1 was launched in 1958. First, it was placed in orbit about the Earth. Then, another rocket was fired. The speed of the payload was to be boosted to 25,000 miles per hour, the speed necessary for an object to become free of the gravity of the Earth. No longer an Earth satellite, the space probe would then be free to coast to its far-off destination and radio back its findings by telemetry, the technique of transmitting or reading instrument recordings from a distance. Batteries are used to power instruments which detect and analyze various phenomena, and to power radios whose antennas send the findings back to Earth. This is how a space probe operates to bring us new knowledge. Pioneer 1, however, failed to escape the Earth's gravity and fell back, burning as it re-entered the Earth's atmosphere. In 1959, Russian Lunik 1 and then American Pioneer 4 were sent into space and beyond the moon. Lunik 2 revealed that the moon had no magnetic field. The discovery was made just before the probe hit the lunar surface. Lunik 3 was so engineered that it curved behind the moon and took photographs of the side that had always remained hidden from the Earth. Pioneer 5 was the first interplanetary probe. It was aimed at Venus and launched in the year 1960. In 1961, a Venus probe was launched by Russia. Both probes failed to get information about Venus. Both went into orbit about the Sun. But a new era had begun. Larger, more powerful rockets allowed larger, more sophisticated payloads. So man took his first step. First the Russians, then Americans successfully orbited the Earth in the early 1960s. The next step will involve sending crews into space. The problems solved by such a project will undoubtedly lead to landing the first men on the moon. The second generation of moon probes, such as this Ranger, have helped to prepare for such a landing by collecting and relaying back information, by televising back to Earth details of the moon's surface. The same telemetry methods will be used for the more sophisticated moon probes, such as surveyors, designed to make an even more detailed study of the moon. Equipped with an elaborate system of solar cells, the surveyor will turn sunlight into electricity to power its instruments and radio. Because this side of the moon always faces the Earth appears suspended in the moon's sky and can always be seen because there is no atmosphere, clouds, or haze on the moon. Delicate instruments, whose measurements can be affected by even the presence of the spacecraft, are held away from the craft by long, mechanically operated arms. Mirrors reflect into the lenses of the television cameras a close look at the harsh, irregular surface which, except for meteorite impacts, is believed to have remained the same for millions of years. Meanwhile, other probes are being planned. Some will study the moon as they orbit around it. Some will explore the solar system, shown here by concentric circles representing the paths of some of the planets as they orbit about the Sun. Nearest the Sun is Mercury. Venus is next, then the Earth, then Mars. Because Venus and Mars come closer to the Earth than the other planets, the first probes have been in their direction. There are times when Venus is only 25 million miles away. However, at other times, it can be as much as 162 million miles away. Mars, our next nearest neighbor, is sometimes as close as 35 million miles away, but when the Earth and Mars are on opposite sides of the Sun, the distance is sometimes as great as 248 million miles. As a result of these variations in distance, space probes are launched only during those periods when the target planet is in a favorable position. Between 1965 and 1975, only certain years are favorable for probing Venus and certain years for Mars. Specially designed for interplanetary travel, the Mariner is capable of traveling great distances and sending back information gathered along the way. Shortly after launching, solar paddles unfold like butterflies' wings. Sensors cause the paddles to face the Sun. Solar cells are used to convert sunlight into electric power needed for telemetry. Through the nearly perfect vacuum of outer space, telemetry has already successfully functioned over a distance of 54 million miles. Radiation counters aboard the probes have revealed that the sun constantly radiates streams of electrically charged particles called the solar wind, as symbolized here. During a solar flare-up, the radiation increases. How does this affect the Earth? Well, the Earth, like a bar magnet, is surrounded by lines of magnetic force, shaped something like this. Space probes have proved that the Earth's magnetic field controls the paths of the charged particles from the sun, trapping and forcing them to circulate within the field. Some escape to form the Earth's aurora borealis. Some escape back into space. But the dense accumulation that remains is called the magnetosphere and is symbolized here by this model. The magnetosphere is now known to be very dangerous to space travelers. Space probes have also discovered new facts about the planet Venus. A surface temperature of 800 degrees Fahrenheit, which would prevent life such as exists on Earth. Venus, like the moon, rotates very slowly. Probes have found no magnetic field. But because there is a strong magnetic field around the fast-spinning Earth, many scientists now conclude that a magnetic field is caused when a celestial body rotates rapidly. Future probes will undoubtedly provide the answer. Space probes are mechanical scouts reconnoitering man's new frontier. Already they have warned him of the magnetosphere and its deadly radiation, of the searing death that lurks beneath the clouds of Venus. As the Earthling learns to become a spaceman, he must ask himself many questions. Can I survive out there? What will I learn? What contribution can I make with this new knowledge?
Man, that narrator sounds so much like that moody Institute of Science narrator who we did the How Many Stars. I need to do some comparisons because, yeah. And also good ears to somebody who heard the music in the background and recognized it as some library music that was also used in Night of the Living Dead. And it was also used in Fallout film made by the Civil Defense. And that's what made me realize, like, oh, that's just library music. They didn't actually write it for, what am I trying to say? They didn't write it for the film. They didn't have a budget for that. Okay, so we have another film set up on the Cintel, the film scanner. And let me just say thanks for watching us, and if you like what you saw, you can buy some coffee at ko-fi.com/avgeeks. You can also go to avgeeks.com and buy DVDs. We have over 180 DVDs for sale. It's kind of crazy. And coming soon, I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with this, but we got new stickers. The artwork provided by one of the homeschool kids, Steven. And so I asked his permission if I could make a sticker. I'm going to send him a bunch of stickers. But yeah, so that's going to be coming up at some point. All right. So on the Cintel, this is a film made by the UN, and the title's clip, but it's World Without End. Enjoy. Oops. Not right. Nope. Let's try that again. There we go. Enjoy.
We are looking at human beings, and we are seeing something of two countries where they live. In the west, Mexico. In the east, Thailand, or Siam, as many people still call it. Different languages, different religions, different animals, trees, and flowers. Yet in both places, people get their living from the earth and from the water. In both places, people feel pain and hunger, and people enjoy health and the good things of life. They have enemies and they have friends. They have children and their children to be happy. This man's name is Faustino. He is a Tarascan Indian. His country is Mexico. He is a fisherman who lives on an island in Lake Pátzcuaro. Long ago, before any European came to the Americas, this lake was the center of the great Tarascan Empire. The Tarascan Indians still live here. They have lost their empire, but they still get their living from the lake, and they retain their old love for music and for singing. Market day in Pátzcuaro, and the Indians have come into the town from the islands where they live, from the settlements along the lake shore, and from the villages in the mountains around the lake. This is a social occasion, as well as the occasion for buying and selling. There are processions to be enjoyed, and all the noise, too. It's like an old-fashioned revolution. An old-fashioned revolution. Here also is something which is, in its own way, like a revolution. The people in the launch are students who belong to an organization called CREFAL. CREFAL means the Fundamental Education Center in Latin America. It is supported by UNESCO and by the governments. And because of people like this, if there were enough of them, the world itself could be better. The students of CREFAL, many more of them than we have seen so far, when they have finished their course, are going to return to their own countries in Latin America, where they will try to apply the knowledge of life and the sympathy with living people which has come to them partly by nature and partly by study and experience. The director of CREFAL, Lucas Ortiz, has faith in them and knows the greatness of their task.
Here we leave you on the path of your destiny and that of the Americas. You are carrying on a gigantic program of work, but you are not dwarfs. You have to confront disease with health, poverty with abundance, ignorance with knowledge, hate with brotherhood, war with peace.
At the headquarters of the United Nations in New York, there are more flags than those of Latin America, and many more countries are represented than Mexico and Siam. It is an organization which was formed because people were ashamed of the past and because they had hopes for the future. For a long time, the peoples of the world have been organizing their fears and their hatreds. This is something different. And though no organization is perfect, no plans can be guaranteed to be successful, we do know enough to know this. Love can cast out fear. And, as we have seen, it is not impossible to love your neighbor. Now, as the world shrinks, the neighbors are closer together. Moreno the student and the man on the elephant, the fisherman and the farmer, the children, happy or unhappy, are not so far apart. And though we may not all have learned to accept this fact, it is a fact that we all live in the same world, with them and with others.
That was 1953. I think the Korean conflict was going on. UN was trying to spread its message about trying to help some of these populations that were having some problems. Yeah, it's fascinating to kind of look at that. I do have some other UN films that are longer, that are kind of interesting, that kind of talk about specific aspects of, global issues like air traffic. Since we're going from one country to another, how do you maintain that? Who's the governing body that governs that? And there was the UN branch that did that. And I can't remember the name of it, but at some point I might dig that up. It's kind of interesting. So thanks for tuning in today. I know I'm ending a little early today. Sometimes that happens. But I appreciate your eyeballs. Appreciate you watching and commenting. As always, you can donate coffee to us, but you can also, a free thing you can do is just hit the thumbs up button or the like button or the subscribe button. Those are great ways to say that you enjoy what we do, or you at least are intrigued by what we do. You don't necessarily like what we do, but you appreciate the fact that we do it. We'll be back again tomorrow on Tuesday, and we'll watch some more 16 and maybe some more from the Craig Baldwin collection. This also, I should say that this last film was from his collection as well. He sent me this big, solid box of films on cores, and so we've been going through those and scanning them. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and we will talk to you soon. Take care.